It's time for 515 Fantasy Football.
I know football. Are you ready for some football?
Domination on Sundays begins with listening to these guys on Thursdays.
You ready for this?
Over 40 years of fantasy football experience between them.
Yeah!
One is a proud veteran of the United States Marine Corps, husband and father, entering his 19th year of fantasy competition. Brian Eikenberry. The other, also a proud husband and father, is one of the winningest fantasy minds in the state. Celebrating 25 years of excellence, Andy Hall.
Let's get the game on!
It's showtime. The 515 Fantasy Football Show with your hosts, Andy Hall and Brian Eikenberry.
It is great to be back for yet another week of NFL action. Week number 4. When the trends begin to show themselves and the mirages begin to fade away. Who are the real deal championship makers and who are the duds disguised as fantasy helpers? Let us guide you through the noise. Andy Hall joined by friend, co-host, all-around good fella, Brian Eikenberry.
Wow, fantasy football sucks for me.
I love that intro. Thanks, Brian.
Good Lord.
A lot of people feel that way right now. You're 1 and 2. You're 0-3. It's not feeling too good.
Yeah, I mean, I got one where I'm 3-0, and there's a real good chance I'm going to go undefeated because I'm just power stacked. But in some other ones, it's terrible, and it's not. This is for everybody. Look, your studs are duds, and your duds are studs, and it's a tough time to figure out. Get that lineup nirvana action going on. It's very frustrating right now.
I've always said that the first 2 weeks, sometimes the first 3 weeks of the NFL season are basically an extension of the preseason, in that you really don't start to see trends emerging that you can bank on until after week 3 or 4. So this is the point at which we're starting to see that perhaps trends are happening. Then there are the obvious. Kareem Hunt. I mean, that is definitely a trend at this point. It is definitely
but
not
it
a
can't
mirage.
sustain itself, can it?
Sure can. Why not? Just because we haven't seen it before doesn't mean it can't be done.
I totally agree, but the odds are definitely stacked against it.
Oh, I would agree with that completely. But, I mean, he's done it 3 weeks in a row now. We're talking long runs. We're talking consistency on a good offense. Kareem Hunt, that's a trend. He may not be the number one back running away for the rest of the season, but he's a guy that I feel like is definitely going to finish. I said this a couple weeks ago. I think he's a guy that could finish top 3 at the position at his rookie season. And speaking of rookies, they've been impressive this year.
Yeah, that was something we talked about, early on, and I was saying I don't think this is going to be a big rookie year. Everyone's going to be looking for the next Zeke. I'm not confident. Fournette looks just fine.
Cook?
Yeah, I mean, it's great.
It really is.
If you own them, or me, like I skipped over them.
Yeah, in Dynasty especially, you're set for a long time there, provided they can stay healthy, and that's always the caveat. Any number of ways to reach out and get a response from one or both of us. We're on Facebook, 515 Fantasy Football, on Twitter, at 515 Fantasy. I'm at Andy Hall Radio. He's at IkeFFB. That's IKEFFB. The show, of course, in addition to being on ESPN Radio at 1350 AM and 102.1 FM in Central Iowa, also digital and digestible on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play, whatever you got. Also, ESPNDesMoines.com. We do respond to everybody that takes time to reach out to us, but we offer more in-depth fantasy help via Patreon, Brian.
Yeah, we do. Patreon, it's our home away from home. It's our opportunity to give you, the listeners, the extra attention that you may need. We have some contribution levels. It makes our show better. It helps us get new equipment, better equipment, and it helps us give back to you in a variety of ways. We can give you our bargain bins 24 hours early to kind of beat everybody out there on the waiver wire, so you have the early access. You can get private access to us 1 hour before kickoff to get some one-on-one time, or we have options where we can just completely set your roster for you, take a look at your waiver wire, and make needed adjustments to your team.
Nearly 2 hours jam-packed with fantasy forecasting. Brian and I will break down all the Week 4 matchups, grading all the fantasy-relevant players as usual. Pop quiz segment a little later on. Bargain bin pick sponsored by our friends at Twisted Vine Brewery. A recap of the aforementioned Listener League presented by Iowa Firecracken. All that, some disagreements, I'm sure, maybe an argument or 8, followed by bitter silence, maybe. Let's begin, as we always do, with some headlines of fantasy note. Word out of Indy is that quarterback Andrew Luck is targeting Week 6 for his return to game action. He has not been practicing this week. It could start as early as next week, I'm told. Eagles running back Darren Sproles not only broke his arm in Sunday's win over the Giants, he also tore his ACL. That's a bad day right there, Brian. That's a real bad day.
Yeah, it was a terrible timing for me to scalp him off the the waiver wire out there, only to say, yeah, all right, here's my big sleeper. Bye-bye.
Panthers wide receiver Kelvin Benjamin avoided what could have been a major knee injury in Sunday's win over Seattle. He may miss some time. He's been on the practice field in pads, but hasn't participated as of yet this week. We'll see what his status is this weekend. It may be smart just to let him sit in a matchup. They have New England this week. Do they not, or is it the Saints? I can't remember. No, it must be New England, right? Because they just played the Saints last week.
I don't have that matchup, sir.
Chargers running back Melvin Gordon suffered a minor bone bruise in his knee on Sunday. He says he's fine, but it's one of those things, a pain tolerance deal, Brian, where he'll get out there and play on Sunday, I'm sure. But if the pain starts to come back, he might take a few plays off, maybe a whole quarter. Who knows with Melvin Gordon? That's a tough one right there.
Yeah, you're just praying it's not long-term.
Titans running back DeMarco Murray practicing in full this week, so he's no longer an injury risk, apparently. Jets running back Matt Forte dealing with a turf toe injury. He probably will not play this weekend by all reports. Bengals tight end Tyler Eifert expected to miss multiple weeks with multiple injuries. Brian, I mean, we said it at the beginning of the season. Guys were avoiding. Tyler Eifert was right near the top of that list for me.
He was indeed, with good reason, and it's paying off.
Redskins running back Samaje Perine was forced from the team's week 3 victory with an injured hand, was seen with it wrapped on the sidelines. That was following a lost fumble for Samaje Perine. I'd say his time for now at least is over in Washington. It's going to be a while. I think once Rob Kelly gets back, he's definitely going to be the guy. And, of course, they've got Chris Thompson just absolutely killing it, especially in PPR leagues. Raiders wide receiver Michael Crabtree suffered a chest injury in the Sunday night game. He's been limited in practice this week, but it looks like he could give it a go this weekend. Seahawks wide receiver Doug Baldwin's groin injury, not believed to be too serious, which is good news, but running back C.J. Prosise already expected to miss this week's game with an ankle injury. Fire up Chris Carson if you got him off the waiver wire. Sounds like he's going to get a full workload this weekend. Packers wide receiver Randall Cobb, he's been taken off the team's injury report. He's good to go for tonight's game. Running back Thomas Rawls held without a touch in Sunday's loss at Carolina. He was on the field for just one offensive snap. Eddie Lacy, by the way, got 0 in that game. It's all about Chris Carson now at this point, I alluded to.
Yeah, if you listened to us, we called it. We gave you a couple days heads up that this was coming down the pipeline, so hopefully you snagged him.
Couple of defensive notes here, and I think these are really important. In Sunday's loss at Minnesota, Bucs D-tackle Gerald McCoy, the All-Star, in a walking boot following the game and may miss some time. Linebacker Levante David suffered a high ankle sprain in that game as well. He will miss time. I tell you what, those were two big run stuffers for that Tampa defense. I say you've got a running back going against Tampa. Fire him up, you know?
I agree.
Texans head coach Bill O'Brien hinted that wide receiver Will Fuller may be active for the first time this season in Week 4. He's been practicing in full this week, so he's a big sneaky guy that we've been talking about as well. Fantasy impact of new OC Bill Lazor in Cincinnati. Number 1, A.J. Green gets fed. I think we were not surprised by that. Number 2, Joe Mixon. Looks like the feature back going forward.
Yeah, so...
I mean, there's no doubt by the snap count, the touch totals in that last game. Joe Mixon.
Yeah, but the team sucks.
And the offensive line sucks.
I
think the team is
I have
better.
been kicking around a trade in my head for a week, and that's one of the individuals being offered, and I can't quite pull the trigger yet.
You noticed in our listener league, I traded for Joe Mixon.
Well, I don't trust you. I don't agree with you at all.
I got him. He's on my team, and he will be a starter. Pro Football Talk reports Vikings quarterback Teddy Bridgewater will be healthy enough to play when first eligible, Week 7. Team will likely proceed with caution is the thought here, but he'll at least be eligible starting in Week 7, according to Pro Football Talk. Teddy Bridgewater, we didn't think we might – there was a possibility when that thing happened to him, whatever it was, that he might never see the field again. So this is pretty stunning news if you ask me.
I think it's all smoke and mirrors.
You think?
I think it's a big trick. I don't know what's going on there, but the way they've never disclosed, the way they've never talked about it, it's like he's sort of like some Scientologist in that locker room, and they don't want to deal with him anymore.
Christian Science or something.
Yeah.
Well, I will say it's weird that it happened at their facility on the practice field, and yet nobody has any footage of this happening.
Exactly. There's too much.
Weird.
There's too much fishy business here.
Yeah.
Like maybe he's like not even a football player. Maybe he's like in the witness protection program or something.
I mean, weirdness happens in Minnesota. We saw it after week 1. Sam Bradford goes out, looks like Tom Brady against the Saints, and then all of a sudden he's got this bone bruise, and he's been missing time. He's considered week to week. He may not play this week either, and might be Case Keenum again for the Vikings.
Oh, the Lions are just gonna beat it.
We'll see. Chargers tight end Hunter Henry was not targeted in week 3. That's the second time that this has happened, Brian. Hunter Henry being completely ignored in that offense.
So there's two people I'm no longer talking about or giving opinions on. It's Hunter Henry and Derrick Henry.
There you go. I like it. Saints wide receiver Willie Snead's 3-game suspension is over, as is Bengals linebacker Vontaze Burfict. Of course, I picked him up in our shared league, Brian, so he's my defensive player now. And Chiefs kicker Cairo Santos, some kicker news. He's been placed on IR with an undisclosed injury. The team signed Panthers practice squad guy Harrison Butker, sure to be trying a 61-yard field goal for the win this week. How about Jake Elliott last week? That was amazing. We are going to dive right into week number 4 and begin with Thursday night football, one of the storied rivalries in all the NFL. The Bears, the Packers. You'll hear that game and more coming your way next on 515 Fantasy Football, 1350 AM ESPN Radio. Welcome back, the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM in Central Iowa, 102.1 FM as well, ESPN Radio. I'm Andy Hall. That's Brian Eikenberry. We're diving right into the Week 4 matchups, grading all the fantasy-relevant players. Begin with tonight's big Thursday night matchup. If last week was terrible in terms of what we all expected and turned out to be a gem, what is this one going to be like?
If this one's 3-6, I am officially going to Bizarro World.
Yeah, well, Thursdays are just like that, aren't they?
We always thought, oh, this is going to be terrible. The Rams, Niners, this is garbage.
And it was so good.
80 total points scored.
I caught it at the best time, too. I came in midway third quarter, so I saw some fireworks. It was a lot of fun. Brian, one of the most storied rivalries in all the NFL, Chicago-Green Bay.
Quarterback Aaron Rodgers, he's going to get an A. Consistently shows he's going to get you 25 to 30 points every single time, every single game. And that's definitely going to be even easier against the Bears' 20th-ranked pass defense. He's always going to have his hands full, and Rodgers is unfazed by outdoor play. So go ahead, fire him up. Obviously, you don't need me to tell you that. Ty Montgomery, this week, I'm going to give him a B. He got bottled up pretty bad against the Bengals in the run game. But even when the runs are shut down, Montgomery's that dual threat guy because obviously he was a wide receiver. He knows how to catch the ball. So if the run game does get shut down, it's all going to be passing. So start with confidence, but don't expect a big payday out of Montgomery this week. Wide receiver Jordy Nelson, I'm going to give him a B+. Last week, I said that, hey, we might want to watch that quad. Yeah, that didn't stop him anything. It clearly wasn't an issue, and I don't think it's going to be an issue here. The Bears, here's something. They gave up over 100 and a touchdown to Antonio Brown. So watch what they're going to do with Jordy here. I think Jordy's going to have a great game this week. So clearly, big payday coming from him.
Sure.
Devontae Adams, he's going to get a B. Decent grade here, but with Cobb coming back into the mix, he's going to go. Expect it all to kind of even out again. The Devontae Adams, the Randall Cobb, everyone's going to be nice and easy there. I will say Devontae Adams is on pace for 1,000 yards for the first time in his career.
Wow.
So keep that in mind. That's his ceiling, is about the 900-yard mark. So don't try and elevate him because Cobb's been out. You can't forget about that part when you're starting him. On to the Chicago Bears. Quarterback Mike Glenn is going to get a B-. Never really a smart start in my eyes. Even in front, he averages less than 200 yards a game. And he has as many turnovers as touchdowns. Jordan Howard, B+. Just when you think he's down, bam, 23 rushing attempts, 138 yards, 2 touchdowns later. Kind of stuff we talked about. You think you're going one way, it goes the other way. Green Bay has given up the 10th most fantasy points for running backs this year. Kendall Wright, C. I suppose someone's got to catch the ball, but it's minimal work. unless it's a busted play for him. Deontay Thompson, go ahead and leave on the bench. Tariq Cohen, here's the fun part. We've talked about it in the PPR leagues. He has the most receptions on the team.
Yeah, the guy's amazing. I mean, in PPR leagues, he's a guy you can actually consider in your running back 2 slot.
Yeah.
So let's say, and we've talked about this before, teams where you can start both backs. I think you have a great situation here. Jordan Howard, Tariq Cohen, because of that depleted wide receiver core, for sure you could start both.
100%.
On to New Orleans at Miami. On the Saints side, Drew Brees is an A grade. Even on the road in Miami, Brees is a good bet to get it done. Mark Ingram, a B grade. I still view him as the most potentially productive Saints runner week to week, even though Peterson, certainly a threat to steal goal line work. Kamara, he's shown great skills, particularly in the passing game. Ingram is still a combination of both guys, in my opinion, and still worth a look in your running back 2 or flex spot. Miami has, to their credit, been pretty tough on opposing runners through 2 games, thus the B grade. Alvin Kamara, I mentioned him. I give him a C+ here. Worth a look in your flex in PPR leagues only. I wouldn't invest a running back 1 or 2 slot on him just yet. Let's see how the season continues to play out for New Orleans. Adrian Peterson, I'm leaving on the bench. At this point, he's probably droppable outside of deep leagues and in circumstances of desperation. Michael Thomas, an A grade. Miami is allowing 290 yards per game to opposing pass catchers. No reason why Thomas shouldn't succeed here. Ted Ginn, a C+, should be plenty to go around in this one for the Saints, including Ginn. Of course, he's the team's deep threat and always a chance to connect on a long one, which the Dolphins are prone to giving up. Willie Snead's back in the lineup, but I'm leaving him on the bench this week. Only sees the field when the Saints are in 3 wide receiver sets, which has been only about 50% of the snaps. Because of that and the fact that he's fresh off a 3-game suspension to start the season, I'm not starting him yet, but I would like to see him rostered if he's not already. Kobe Fleener, I'm also leaving on the bench. Listen, Snead's back on the field. Fleener, his fantasy value plummets, so I'm not starting him. Over to the Dolphins, Jay Cutler, a B grade. As bad as he looked last Sunday against a bad Jets team, you figure there's no way he can fail against the league's 31st ranked pass defense, right? Well, the Saints also happen to stink against the run. So I'm thinking the Dolphins will want to feed Jay Ajayi a lot if they're able and control time of possession. Therefore, Cutler's tempered grade, and Ajayi gets an A grade. All right. He's one of my favorite starts of the week. Only thing that could derail him is if the Saints get up big early and Miami needs to abandon the run. I think they'll be able to avoid that, however, by running Ajayi down their throats. Jarvis Landry, a B+. I love this matchup. Love Landry, especially in PPR leagues. Doesn't score many touchdowns, but against the Saints, I wouldn't rule out the possibility. Devontae Parker's a B grade. Same goes for him. It's a solid B for Devontae. We've seen more than one opposing pass catcher succeed against the Saints in multiple games going back to last year. Diggs and Thielen come to mind from week 1. Both Landry and Parker can be really good starts here. Kenny Stills, he's a C grade, a deep threat guy. Absolutely worth a dart throw in a matchup like this one, but only when you're super desperate. Julius Thomas, a C+, not yet seeing the requisite volume to warrant a spot in your starting lineup. However, again, the running theme here is that against the Saints, anyone and everyone is potentially in play fantasy-wise.
All right, let's do Tennessee at Houston. Quarterback Marcus Mariota, B+. Average passing offense meets average passing defense. I'm going to give Mariota a good start here in part because Houston has given up the 7th most points to opposing quarterbacks. So go ahead, give him a start this week. Running back to DeMarco Murray, I'm going to give him a B. I'm cautiously optimistic again. Just when we write him off as the torch is being passed, he puts both fingers straight up in the air, 14 attempts and 114 yards and a score.
I would like to point out we're not the only fantasy analysts that got this one completely wrong last week.
But, hey, you know what? I'll own up to it when I need to.
Same
and
here.
This is 100% one that I whiffed on worse than, I don't know. What's a funny movie? What's that pitching kid?
I mean, any sequel, really, you could probably, except for The Godfather. I think that's the only one you cannot stick your nose up at.
Yeah. So, Derrick Henry, I'm going to give him a B-. Still getting a hefty split behind Murray. Observed from a distance, but it looks like he's going to have to wait to get the start. Rashard Matthews is going to get a B. Has maintained modesty with his first score coming last week. I would expect another, given the fact that Houston is allowing teams to score. Decker's going to get a C. Has not been the player we were expecting, and that's maybe because it's been a rotating effort. Maybe it's because the week he's been waiting to erupt is this week. Until I see consistency, I can't put Decker in there. There's so many options for Mariota to go to that Decker is just – he's never been that standout guy. So he's just kind of lost in the shuffle, I feel like.
I am amazed that he's been invisible as he has, but That's it.
He's old. He's the Brandon Marshall.
I'm
maybe
not ready to
Jets.
say that yet.
Maybe the Jets were actually smart and like, I'm gonna unload all this cap room.
Yeah,
and do nothing with it.
Turned out really well for the Jets.
Move it on to the hot dog stand.
Is that it for that matchup?
Well, oh no, hey,
I was
you want me
gonna
to
say,
do Houston? I got a whole nother team.
I was
going
to say you didn't do the Texans, so I guess nobody started. That's really funny. Deshaun Watson, by the way, awesome. Gave up his first ever paycheck in the NFL to some gals that were helping out at a shelter, actually.
Yep.
That were affected by the flood. So he gave up his first paycheck.
Yeah,
Very
well,
cool.
yeah, and then he's going to get a B+ from us. So I mean, I'd appreciate a hat tip from time to time.
I
Mr.
like the
Watson.
karma thing though. It's a karma thing.
Yep. Give him a start if you have an unhappy with your current quarterback situation. Why not? He had 300 yards and 2 touchdowns last week. Without his footwork, and Tennessee gives up the third most points to quarterbacks. So, hey, you know what? Think about it. Ponder your options. I would feel comfortable starting Deshaun Watson this week. Lamar Miller's going to get a B-. Subpar performances out of Lamar Miller.
Oh, he sucks.
I mean, it's terrible. I'm waiting for Alfred Blue to go ahead and get the start. I don't know if he's still around.
Deontay Foreman.
But I think the better Watson does, the worse Lamar Miller's going to do from there because it doesn't have to rely on it. He is the running game. It's just kind of going to move on. So I'm not a confident start with Lamar Miller. DeAndre Hopkins is going to get an A. He has 7 receptions in each game, and this week could be the time he goes bananas. Watson knows where he is in the field, and that's great. Even if his targets have dropped a lot, he's still catching the ball. He knows where to force it. Braxton Miller and Will Fuller. I don't know if we're there on Fuller yet.
He might play this week. He's been practicing.
Yeah, I'm going to leave him on the bench for now. I'm super excited to get him back in there, but it's one of those things where I just got to wait. You got to see how it comes out. Let him get a week in there. Braxton Miller, non-existent in the game, period. Basically demoted, not that it matters anyways.
Brian doesn't talk tight ends, but a super sleeper for me this week at the tight end position is Ryan Griffin. With C.J. Fedorowicz out, the Houston Texans like to use the tight end a lot. Ryan Griffin is their starting tight end this week. So
there you
if you're
have it.
tight at the tight end position or sick of your guys, definitely look at Ryan Griffin. He's on your waiver wire, I guarantee it. Jacksonville at the New York Jets. On the Jags side, Blake Bortles, a B-. This actually isn't a terrible spot for Bortles. Unfortunately, nobody really cares, maybe in 2 quarterback superflex leagues. The Jets are completely mediocre in every way, and there will be opportunities, I'm just saying. Leonard Fournette is an A grade. The Jets rank 27th in yards allowed to opposing backs. They've given up 4 scores in 3 games. Fournette gets a ton of work, can't possibly miss in this matchup. Marquis Lee, a B grade. Volume may be an issue since the Jags really want to run the ball, but Lee is too talented to be ignored. And as I mentioned in my Bortles breakdown, there should be opportunities here. And I think Lee, being the more talented pass-catching option the Jags receivers have, he stands to benefit if anyone. Allen Hurns, you got to keep in the mix here. C+. I mean, he does have a nose for the end zone. We've seen that the past couple of weeks. And always has going back. I mean, he was a double-digit touchdown guy just a couple years ago. But when he doesn't score, he doesn't give you much else to like. So that's the risk. Mercedes Lewis is a C grade. Don't buy his 3-touchdown outlier from week 3 in London. Yes, he's a huge target that can't be missed in the red zone, but he's also a very mediocre talent overall and can't be trusted to produce week to week, no matter how juicy the matchup. And by the way, this matchup is not that great. For the Jets, Josh McCown's on the bench. Newsflash. The Jags are actually pretty awesome against the pass.
Yeah, they are.
They've allowed the league's fewest passing yards, only 124 per game on average through 3 games. They've given up 3 touchdowns passing. That's it. And they've picked 4 enemy passes. McCown probably isn't even being rostered in your league, so on the bench he sits. Bilal Powell's a B grade, as good as Jacksonville's pass defense is. Their run D is actually pretty bad, on par with the Jets, actually. They give up nearly 5 yards per carry. They've yielded 3 rushing scores thus far this year. New York still being in tank mode should cause concern for Powell's workload, of course, but if they don't want to be blatant about it, they'll let their most talented back do what he does and not give it to that Elijah guy, whatever his name is. Jermaine Kearse, a C-grade low-end flex option. Probably won't have a lot of luck against a very stingy Jags secondary. Austin Seferian Jenkins, I'll throw a C+ at. 6 targets in his first game action week 3. If there is a Jets pass catcher besides Powell to throw a dart at, it's probably ASJ this week, and it pains me to say that.
You just said that, pal.
Ugh, gross. I got to take a shower. We'll be right back with more matchups. Week 4 of the NFL on 515 Fantasy Football. Stick around. This is the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM and 102.1 FM ESPN Radio, Des Moines, Iowa. Andy Hall, Brian Eikenberry continuing to break down the Week 4 matchups. Into Carolina at New England. We'll start with the Panthers. Cam Newton, big question here. Will Cam Newton actually appear magically in this game?
No, move on.
If he can't get it done against the team giving up the most passing yards and passing scores through 3 games, by the way, that's New England, he'll never get it done. The Patriots have been absolutely awful against opposing passers, and despite a depleted receiving core, Cam should be able to find some success in this matchup. I'm tempering him down to a B-, however. Christian McCaffrey, though, he's a B grade, considering how terrible the Patriots have been against opposing pass catchers, not to mention the over 5 yards per carry they're allowing to opposing backs thus far. I think this has all the makings of a breakout game. We've been waiting for it from Christian McCaffrey in a world where the Panthers weren't completely destroyed by injuries to Kelvin Benjamin and Greg Olsen. That's where I think it's going to be a huge breakout game. But I think the rookie gets a ton of touches in this game regardless. And even if Belichick and crew scheme to stop him, which I think they will, he should turn in a decent fantasy day for you. So a B grade. Jonathan Stewart, a C+. New England is one of only 2 NFL teams allowing over 5 yards per carry through 3 games. Jay Stu may not be much of a home run hitter at this point in his career, but he should be good for at least one scoring opportunity, you would think, even if he doesn't get a lot of volume. Devin Funchess is a C+. Besides McCaffrey, this is your primary pass-catching option, most likely. Kelvin Benjamin could play, I guess, but he hasn't practiced yet, so I'm not holding my breath. I know I've been tough on Devin Funchess in the past. My opinion that he's just a guy hasn't really changed, but sometimes when opportunity knocks, a guy will answer. This is one of those matchups where Funchess is going to have to answer the door if the Panthers want to have any chance. Ed Dixon's your tight end. Leaving him on the bench doesn't excite me at all. There are likely higher ceiling guys like Ryan Griffin, I mentioned, on your waiver wire if you were an Olsen Eifert kind of guy or gal. For the Patriots, Tom Brady, easy A grade. He's been terrific since his quiet week 1. You're starting him. Mike Gillislee, a B+. The Panthers are a middle-of-the-road run-stopping unit, allowing 4.1 yards per carry through 3 games. Only 1 touchdown on the ground thus far. Gillislee, unquestionably the guy the Patriots go to inside the 5, not to mention a good candidate for a strong workload if you believe, as I do, that game script will have New England running more in the second half. James White's a C grade. Disappeared off the radar in last week's win, unfortunately. Cannot be trusted to be an every-week PPR auction like we thought through the first 2 games. Brandon Cooks a B+. When he was a Saint, he absolutely killed Carolina when he was at home. He was extremely mediocre in games away from New Orleans. Now, I don't know if that trend has much relevance now that he's a Patriot, but he's certainly got some forward momentum going now after a really spectacular Week 3 performance, including that game winner he caught. Chris Hogan's a B grade. Anyone with a target share of 15% or better in this offense should be considered for your starting lineup. And Hogan, though on the low end of that percentage, is always a threat to score. He's already got 3 touchdowns on the season. Danny Amendola is still battling through some injuries, so I'm leaving him on the bench. Rob Gronkowski, an A grade, on pace for the most targets he has ever had. Always a great start is Gronk.
All right, let's do the game of the week here. Detroit at Minnesota, battle for the NFC North. Quarterback Matt Stafford, I'm going to give him a B. I believe the Lions will be forced into passing action early, and the run game will be a short passing game. The Vikes give up 277 through 3 games, so look for the Lions to exploit it. However, the one thing I've noticed is that Stafford is only throwing when he has to. So his yardage has been down over the last 2 games significantly, but that's because they're just not winging it like they used to. It's very skilled and strategic with his attacks, and the defense is playing better, so it's giving them better field position, so they're not having to move it 80 yards every single time. Sometimes it's 30 yards. Amir Abdullah is going to get a B-. Look for a 60-yard performance, and that's about it this week. The Vikes are just ridiculous against the run. I think they're going to push a little harder on Riddick in the passing threat. Golden Tate's going to get an A. Mr. Reliable, move the chains, is going to force the linebackers back into pass coverage. When they're playing teams with a hard, tough run defense, he's always that 10-catch guy. It's going to be like that again this year. Marvin Jones Jr., C+. Boomer bust. It's either a score or nothing, it seems. He is a deep threat, and Stafford will throw it a handful of times his way, but they need to connect. Start if you have deep leagues.
I think he's going to be the guy that Xavier Rhodes ends up getting. The key for Golden Tate here is he's the slot guy, so he's going to be in motion a lot. I'm not sure that Rhodes will be shadowing him like he's done to a lot of guys, Antonio Brown, Mike Evans last week. So I think Golden Tate actually runs a little bit freer than those guys and probably gets more opportunities.
Yep, that's why I gave him a name.
I
Mr.
like
Hall.
that. No, you were smart.
Oh, thank you.
I'm
for your
giving you credit,
validation.
Brian. Take it. Run fast.
Yeah, so
Go to the bank.
And we can talk about Ebron if you want to talk about tight ends. Everyone who is throwing shade at me like, see, Ebron's better. No, he's not. Dropped 2 clutch passes again.
Yeah, listen.
And he cost them the game.
Against the Vikings, I mean, I'm probably not starting him.
Yeah. On to the Vikes side of the ball, quarterback Case Keenum, he's going to get a B as well. Him and Stafford share the same grade. The case for Keenum, I'm not expecting a performance like he had last week. If he played that well, he wouldn't be a career backup. Detroit gives up just over 200 passing yards a game and has 7 interceptions. However, last year when we played Case Keenum, he completed 15 straight passes against Detroit. Nugget, all yours, free of charge.
Great intel.
Running back Dalvin Cook's going to get a B+. I gave him a reduced grade if linebacker Jared Davis plays. I said last week at the Falcons, look, if he's out, the Falcons are going to be able to run everywhere. They did. Same applies here. Dalvin Cook, go ahead and fire him up if Jared Davis is out, which looks like he is going to be. Wide receiver Stephon Diggs. Diggs? Did I say Giggs?
Stephon Giggs,
opening act
giggity,
here.
giggity.
C+, likely matched up against Slay, who's currently the 4th best cover corner in the game. So go ahead and pass on Diggs if you can. Thielen, though, he's going to get a B. I currently like him better than Diggs, mainly because of the coverage and how he runs his routes. 5 receptions, nearly 100 yards last week. I think he has another good week this week against the Lions, rotating out their second corner. And I'll even throw Rudolph at you. He had 1 catch last week. Keenum is not a fan or just doesn't even look his direction.
I think he will this week, though. I think there's some mismatches there that the Vikings could exploit. So I think Rudolph's a good start this week, actually. Buffalo at Atlanta begin with the Bills. Tyrod Taylor, a B-. If he's actually in your starting lineup, you're banking on some production with his feet. The Bills' passing game, borderline anemic at this point. The Falcons have done a decent job against the pass, allowing only 2 scores via the air versus Aaron Rodgers, and only 1 versus Matthew Stafford in the past couple of weeks here. LaShawn McCoy is an A grade. Despite the fact that the Falcons are only allowing 85 yards per game on the ground to opposing backs, they are giving up nearly 5 yards per carry and are notorious for being susceptible to pass-catching guys like Shady, expecting a huge workload and a big fantasy day out of him. Jordan Matthews, a C+. In his lone head-to-head versus the Falcons as a member of the Eagles back in 2015, Matthews finished with 10 receptions for 102 yards. That might have been a career high for him, come to think of it. That's likely his ceiling in a game that probably won't favor the Bills from a game flow standpoint. Charles Clay's a B-, a decent option this week against a Falcons defense that allows on average roughly 5 receptions, about 50 yards per game to opposing tight ends, but has not allowed a tight end score as of yet. For the Falcons, Matt Ryan's a B grade. Believe it or not, the Buffalo Bills are the only team in the NFL that has yet to allow a passing score through 3 weeks of the regular season. In the case of their first 2 opponents, the Jets and Panthers, that's not too shocking, but they also held Broncos pass catchers without a touchdown last week. Ryan is currently ranked just outside of QB1 range, but should put up some decent fantasy statistics, despite what looks like an impossible matchup on paper. Devontae Freeman is a B+. Broncos runners were held to 111 total rushing yards in Week 3, a sign that this may not be as easy a matchup for the Freeman-Coleman tandem as most would think. That said, Freeman is an elite talent, number 4 running back at present, or by the way, in half PPR leagues, you're starting him. Tevin Coleman, you may consider actually putting on the bench. I gave him a C+. Buffalo looks very solid against the pass thus far, and that includes pass catchers like Coleman, who I view as a shaky flex option at best here in Week 4, unless Atlanta jumps out to a big lead and gives him some more volume than he's been getting, and that could happen in a home game, come to think of it, but I'm not banking on it. Julio Jones, a B+. Buffalo's given up nearly 225 yards per game to opposing pass catchers. Again, keep in mind their first 3 opponents were the Jets, the Panthers, and the Broncos. I think it's safe to assume at least 250 for Atlanta receivers to split here, and Jones owing a target share of nearly 30% through 3 games. I think it's going to be a decent game for him. Mohamed Sanu, a C grade. He's been quiet historically against these Bills, having seen them as a member of the Bengals back in 2013 and 2015, totaling only 7 receptions for 74 yards, no scores in those 2 games. I don't see him as anything but a desperation flex this week, if that, but definitely a guy that you might consider depending on the matchup. Taylor Gabriel is a C+. Now, only on the field for roughly half of the Falcons' offensive snaps, but is one of those high-ceiling weapons I'd rather roll out over a low-floor, capped-ceiling guy like Sanu. So Gabriel, if you must take a shot, he's that guy. Austin Hooper is a C grade, only 6 targets through 3 games, so don't expect much in the way of volume here. The Bills have been very good against tight ends this year, and were typically solid in 2016 as well. Another set of matchups before we get to Brian's favorite segment, the pop quiz. That's just a couple segments away, but Brian and I have a few more to get through here in the first half of this week's show, including Pittsburgh-Baltimore. We're going to hear Brian's breakdown of that and the LA Rams-Dallas matchup. I've got the Bengals and the Browns. Woohoo! It's all next on 515 Fantasy Football on 1350 AM ESPN Radio. Back into the Week 4 matchups, 515 Fantasy Football Show. We are on Facebook, 515 Fantasy Football, on Twitter, at 515 Fantasy. I'm at Andy Hall Radio. He's at IkeFFB, IKEFFB. Brian, you begin these matchups.
All right, I think this is the hardest game to call this week. Pittsburgh at Baltimore.
Okay.
Typically, you're like, well, Baltimore's not going to score anything, but the Steelers are going to score. Nah, hold on. Big Ben, I'm going to give a B. Typically, road Ben is not great, especially against a decent defense. Excluding last week, let's just factor it out. What's the trend here? Is it the first 2 weeks where the Ravens' defense was just brutal? Or was it the fact that it was their very first international game? They probably didn't know how to deal with it well, because no team's going to give away secrets on how to deal with the travel and the training schedule and all that. So
I think the Jags actually, his second home is London. For
yeah,
sure,
100%.
Totally used to it.
They are going to be the franchise that moves to London permanently.
If that ever happens. Yep.
It's gonna. So I'm gonna rule that last week was a fluke. Ravens are going to get back down to it. So, but Big Ben's stat line isn't terrible. He has 7 touchdowns and 1 interception. Le'Veon Bell, I'm going to give him a B+. Got in the end zone earlier than he did last year, so hopefully it's going to start paying off. Baltimore's run defense is above average, so maybe not expect 150, but I'll be happy with 80 and a touchdown this week. Antonio Brown, he's going to get a B+. So far, when Antonio Brown gets 10 receptions, he's over 100 yards. Gets plenty of targets, and he's Antonio. But it's funny because his road games this year are his big games, and his one home game is the 60-yarder that he laid up a stinker on.
That was Xavier Rhodes all the way, though.
Yep. So Martavius Bryant is going to get a B-. What to do with him? Down, up, down, last 3 weeks. So his road games are terrible. His home game was good. I'm going to go with down again. He's too wishy-washy, and his boom relies on Antonio's bust. I like Antonio to succeed. Therefore, Bryant, he's only caught 20% of his targets as well. So when you kind of add those things up, I mean, it's just too I'm not comfortable with the start on Martavius Bryant this week. Heading on to the Ravens side of the ball, this one's pretty easy.
Right.
Bench, C+, bench. You apply whichever grade you want.
Okay, so C+ probably goes to Buck Allen.
Yep,
yeah,
there you go.
I
Ding,
guess.
ding, 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 ding.
I mean, the rest of them, yeah, I wouldn't start anybody either. Macklin, no.
Macklin's too risky right now. Look, I think Joe Flacco had a lot of ego damage done over in Jacksonville. When you have more interceptions than touchdowns on the season, that's an issue. Strike one. And you only had 60 yards last week. That's a tough mental block to get over. Ask Andy Dalton.
Yeah.
That's a tough block there, and you weren't that good before. So it's not like it's someone like Aaron Rodgers going out and have a stinker. This is somebody who was never great to begin with, throwing up a stinker. So put that in there. Buck Allen, people are freaking out about Alex Collins right now coming into the game, but it was on garbage time. Don't overreact, folks.
Right.
West fumbled again, so he's out. Look back to Buck Allen to be that guy. I expect them to be playing from behind. So Buck Allens are probably going to come in the passing game. The Mike Wallace, Jeremy Macklin, both are on the bench. Steelers are great against the pass.
Mike Wallace, you want to hear a really hilarious stat? It took Mike Wallace 3 games to equal the amount of receptions Danny Woodhead had on the first drive of the Baltimore Ravens 2017 season.
That's awesome.
Isn't that an amazing
Whoops.
statistic? Wow. Cincinnati at Cleveland. First, the Bengals. Andy Dalton, a B grade, looked more comfortable in Week 3 under new OC, Bill Lazor's offensive philosophy. With a shaky offensive line in front of him, he was getting the ball, rid of the ball much quicker and targeting his best weapon, A.J. Green, a lot more than he had been the previous 2 weeks. That should continue against a Browns defense that gives up on average only 233 yards per game through the air, but has allowed 5 passing scores thus far. Dalton typically performs much better at home against Cleveland than on the road, so I'm tempering his grade a bit here. Joe Mixon is an A grade, Brian. It became pretty obvious to me that a change in OC would change the dynamic of that mess of a backfield, and it sure did, as Mixon became the feature back against Green Bay last week. And now he gets a Browns front seven that was among the league's worst in 2016, and though they looked improved for a bit thus far this season, I think this could be a breakout week for the talented rookie. A.J. Green's an easy A grade. As long as he's healthy, he's in your lineup. He's been a monster in his last 2 head-to-heads with the Browns, totaling 13 receptions for nearly 300 yards and 2 scores last 2 times. Brandon Lafell, a C+. There's room for Lafell in this plus matchup as well, considering his snap percentage and red zone target share through 3 games. I like him as a dart throw in your flex. Brandon Lafell. Over to the Browns, Deshaun Kaiser's a C+. The Bengals are actually pretty good against opposing passers, despite the kind of success Aaron Rodgers was able to find on Sunday afternoon. It's Aaron Rodgers, after all. Kaiser will continue to have growing pains, but at least he's pretty well protected and can contribute some with his feet. But I'm not advocating you start him in anything but 2 quarterback and superflex leagues this week. Isaiah Crowell is a B-, extremely disappointing through 3 games, leaving owners wondering what they should do with him. If you have better options, by all means, but I think you hold him for now, and once he does have a solid game, try to sell on hope and get some value in return. In this matchup, I think he should see more touches than he has been, but since he has shown a toughness in their defensive front, Duke Johnson is still a factor. Both worry me as a Crowell owner. Duke Johnson is a C+. He led the Browns in receptions in Week 3 with 6. And with Corey Coleman out indefinitely and the rest of the Cleveland pass catchers underwhelming and underperforming, Johnson will continue to get lots of touches in the short passing game. Kenny Britt is a C grade, 10 targets in Week 3, was able to only grab 3 of those for 54 yards and a score against the Colts secondary, which, by the way, is inferior to the Bengals defenders. They're much better.
All right, on to the Ramzak Cowboys. Quarterback Jared Goff, I'm going to give him a B+. His best game of his NFL career last week on Thursday night against the Niners. I expect him to do nearly the same against the 18th worst pass defense. As long as the run game is there to support the passing attack, it will be great. On to Gurley. He's going to get a B. Look, Dallas is a top 10 run defense right now, but hopefully the Rams learned a lesson last week that you need to feed Gurley 28 times to get results, as his big game he did last week that made his owners happy. Gurley running to open up the pass game. That's the keys to success there. Sami Watkins, I'm going to give him a B+. Look, we called it last week. Hey, his big breakout's coming. Bam. 13 of 14. But he's questionable. He had that mega game, 102. So watch it. I'm saying watch it.
With Sammy, I mean, he had the concussion late in the game, but it was a Thursday game, so he's had a couple extra days to kind of get over that. And I think he'll be okay this weekend.
Rub it in the dirt, son.
Watch the status for sure.
Cooper Kupp, C+. Look, you seen his name a couple of weeks ago, and that was it. Take him out of your lineup. You could probably even drop him. You don't want a guy that hits every few weeks. We're going to go to the Dallas side of the ball now.
I like it.
Quarterback Dak Prescott, he's going to get a B. Nothing flashy, and being a limited ceiling, he'll always give you a steady drip of points. If you're a Cam owner, Dalton owner, or Carson Palmer owner, this is a good person to turn to. But the Rams have allowed only 3 passing touchdowns over 3 games, so keep that in mind if you're going to try and start Dak.
But, Brian, Dak's the second coming of Christ.
Not so much. Keep putting him out there.
That's for our friend Matt.
Yeah, I know. I'm still waiting on my cannons, by the way. My Roman candles.
I'm not going to be waiting for a while on that.
What, December 1?
Yep. A little bit of time yet.
All right, Zeke, he's going to get an A. Zeke. If the Rams keep the passing touchdowns, that means it's going to be a big payday for Zeke. You expect him to get 25 carries. Expect this to be his mega game. They aren't at home. He's had a bad breakout. He hasn't had a big breakout yet. But the Rams are giving up about 2 rushing touchdowns per game. So I think this is the big payday for Zeke, 40-pointer coming your way.
We'll find out if the desire to play the game is still there. this
Oh,
week.
yeah. Everyone's making a big deal of it.
I know.
Look, you can put the
He's got
camera.
a lot of distractions. I'll give him that.
Yeah. I mean, he doesn't know who to smack, who to hit anymore, what's
Jeez.
going on.
Wow.
Yeah, Des Bryant's going to get a B+. Des will gain yardage, but we talked about the passing stat right there, so it's a slim chance there, especially if Zeke is running wild. They're going to take some shots, but 80 yards seems to be about the line for Des, who has less than 120 yards in the season. So far, a disappointment. Terrence Williams, leave him on the bench. We talked about this. After Des, there's just so many other pass catchers that are just there. Nobody's the big standout at number 2. It just seems to be a spot people rotate through, especially with Witten still on the field. So there you go.
I would argue Witten is your number 2.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, it's kind of sad to see some of these teams where a running back is the number 2 receiver or the tight end is the number 2 receiver. It's not how it's supposed to be, but it's just the talent pool is kind of thinning out.
The name of the game is prognostication prowess. Brian's got a lot of it. We give him a lot of credit on this show, and therefore we like to let him show it off a bit with the pop quiz segment. And that is what's coming next. 3 of Fantasy's toughest questions. I'm actually doing it a little bit different this week, Brian. We're really going to put your forecasting futures to the test.
Deal.
And I'm excited to do it.
Call Miss Cleo today, folks.
I have a very, very good idea of how to answer each of these 3 questions myself. So we'll see if Brian can nail it like I think he can. We do have a few more sets of matchups for Week 4 still to come. We're going to break down the Listener League. We're going to talk bargain bins as well, and then talk about whatever we want to talk about to wrap up this week's edition of the show. So all of that is still coming in this edition of the program. Again, a quick reminder that if you miss any part of the show, you can always go back and listen to it digitally on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, lots of different places. This is the 515 Fantasy Football Show. You're hearing it on 1350 AM ESPN Radio. Into hour number 2 of the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM and 102.1 FM. ESPN Radio, Des Moines, Iowa. I'm Andy Hall. That's Brian Eikenberry. We are on Facebook, 515 Fantasy Football, on Twitter, at 515 Fantasy. I'm at Andy Hall Radio. He's at Ike FFB. That's IKEFFB. Another reminder that we love to answer questions. We love to help you any way we can. A lot of times the responses are typically pretty short on Twitter for good reason. 140 characters is ever all we get. But, well, actually, I heard they're going to expand it to 280.
For certain, I didn't think it was for
It's
everybody.
a beta
I thought it
for
was,
some people.
yeah, we're not that. So,
No. If you do want some more in-depth help, though, there is Patreon, and we urge you to look into that.
Yep, Patreon. Search 515 Fantasy Football. We're out there. Come check us out, and we'd love to have you be a part of the show.
The pop quiz segment has been with us since the very beginning. 3 of Fantasy's toughest questions. We fire them at Brian without any prior knowledge of what I'm about to ask and allow him to just let the wheels turn. Sometimes they need a little grease, so therefore, when Brian gets them wrong, I come right back and tell him why. But that's the fun of the pop quiz. It creates a little bit of controversy at times, but yeah, definitely some good conversation and argument. No doubt about it. Question number 1, Brian, if you're all set. Your current top 5 quarterbacks in typical scoring leagues are the Patriots' Tom Brady, Chiefs' Alex Smith, Saints' Drew Brees, Packers' Aaron Rodgers, and the Lions' Matthew Stafford. How many of these 5 will finish the season inside the top 5 at the position?
I will say 3 of 5. Seems to be pretty fair. I'm just going to use the last, let's say, 7 years as a gauge. Alex Smith has never been here before. He would have peaked. He would have done this 7 years ago. Well, I do like the offense in Kansas City, and I do own Alex Smith. I think these are the highest games he's ever going to have, and it's going to taper down back to originally where Alex Smith are. We need to let defenses figure out Kareem Hunt, and all that'll settle down. And I'm going to go ahead and drop Matt Stafford out of there. Just from, I follow the team. What I see and how things are going, they're committed to the run. I talked about in the matchup. They're not just spraying the ball everywhere and taking those deep shots and passing for the 80 yards. The defense is playing better. It's not giving them as many opportunities to drive the length of the field anymore. All those things kind of in there, I see those 2 dropping out of the top 5.
The answer's 4. Brady, Braze, and Rodgers.
Breed, and Rodgers.
Brady. I should really stop drinking now. Brady, Breeze, and Rodgers are the easy ones. But what about Matthew Stafford? If he can stay healthy, is it not reasonable to believe he can finish inside the top 5 at the quarterback position, Brian? Consider these things. Many of them I already laid out in the preseason when I was touting him as a guy I was going to bat for. Over the last 3 seasons, Stafford has finished higher each year. His trend has been QB 14, QB 10, QB 7. His situation, pretty similar to this year in that A, his running game is underachieving, and B, his pass catchers are above average. But also consider C, his offensive line has improved in 2017. If he's given enough time in the pocket to let those routes develop, and again, if he can stay healthy, that's a big one, I see absolutely no reason Matthew Stafford can't finish as a top 5 quarterback.
It'll be risky. Look, I'd love to put him in there for my own personal greed. I would love that to happen. I just see things a little bit differently there.
Okay, let's play this game then. If you're taking Smith and you're taking Stafford out, give me 2 names you'd possibly replace.
Who's gonna go in there? That's the hard part. There's no real true contenders right now, I think, on squads that are saying, I am this person. You know, we thought maybe it was going to be Eli Manning. Maybe it was going to be Carson Palmer, Andrew Luck, you know. But they're just not – Andrew Luck, obviously, he's not on the field. And he's got to make up 4 or 5 weeks with a bye week coming up, so he's not going to gain that much ground. So there's nobody really to take those spots, so it's a tricky situation.
As we speak, I am currently in the process of looking at guys that are in the neighborhood. Maybe these are some guys you could consider. Currently at number 6 is Russell Wilson. That does not feel like a top 5 quarterback to me, although he's been there before.
Last week helped out a lot.
It sure did. Carson Wentz, with the amount of volume in Philadelphia, they throw the ball a ton.
Yep,
is it possible
sure
if he
do.
can level off on the turnovers a bit? Could he be a top 5 guy? Dak Prescott, we just saw him there last year as a rookie. Dak Prescott's currently number 8. Jared Goff at 9, I don't see that. Marcus Mariota's 10. Might he jump up? I don't know. That running game kind of caps his ceiling. It's tough to say. Matt Ryan could jump up there, certainly.
Yeah.
He's currently at 13, just outside the top 12. So there you have it, but that's what I'm calling is that 4 of the 5 I named are going to finish top 5. Number 2, your current top 5 running backs in half PPR leagues are the Chiefs' Kareem Hunt, Rams' Todd Gurley, Redskins' Chris Thompson, Falcons' Devontae Freeman, and Packers' Ty Montgomery. How many of these 5 will finish the season inside the top 5 at the position, Brian?
And it's a half-point PPR, huh?
It is.
I will say 4.
Okay.
I will drop Chris Thompson out of there because once Rob Kelly comes back, it's a natural drop-off for him. Ty Montgomery is going to be Ty Montgomery. Look, I drafted him when I could. I think he has a beautiful PPR play, and even just a standard, he's still awesome. Kareem Hunt, he is the number 2 receiver in Kansas City right now, so I don't think that's going to taper off that much. Gurley, I think Gurley's going to be Gurley. I think the Rams are learning a lot about themselves in the last couple of weeks. A lot of people thought it was his resurgence. I wasn't quite sold. We'll see, but again, it's that thing of who's going to take their place. Is Zeke going to get fired up? Probably. Dalvin Cook, I think that'll come down. The thing I worry about with rookie running backs is once defenses figure it out, their production always drops off. So I would say Zeke would come back in there and bump out. Who did I drop out?
Thompson, yeah.
Yeah. Because Kareem Hunt has such a lead on everybody else. It's going to be tough to knock him out of there.
Yep. So my answer's 2. Okay.
Jesus.
Kareem Hunt, Devontae Freeman. Both are locks if both can stay healthy, I think. Otherwise, we've seen a somewhat slow start to Le'Veon Bell, who will likely be there. LaShawn McCoy, who I think will also be there, considering his workload and dual threat nature. I think McCoy's going to be there. And I'm ready to go out on a limb here. Who's going to be that 5th guy? I'm going to predict
Dalvin Cook.
Leonard Fournette. will finish top 5 at the position. Judging by his volume and upcoming schedule, I do think it's possible, though most will think I'm nuts and insist Zeke belongs in that company. He's distracted, he's unfocused, and uninspired, too, from what I could tell by watching him. I say Zeke finishes top 10, but not by much. So there's my call, Leonard Fournette. We'll see how that works. But anyway, just throwing it out there. All right, question number 3. Your current top 5 wide receivers in half PPR leagues are the Vikings' Stephon Diggs, Steelers' Antonio Brown, Chiefs' Tyreek Hill, Patriots' Brandon Cooks, and Raiders' Michael Crabtree. How many of these 5 will finish inside the season inside the top 5 at the position, Brian?
I will say 2. I will say Cooks, and who else did I decide? Yeah, Antonio Brown. Duh. If history has shown anything, the top 5 wide receivers are always the top 5 wide receivers year after year after year. And it always balances out that way. That's just the way it works. The cream will rise to the top, and it's going to be that way. The Golden Tate's going to get back up there in the half-point PPRs because he catches 8 balls a game. All that stuff's going to get back up there to the top. So I'll say 2.
The answer's 2. Brown and Cooks. You got this one right on the head. Diggs will eventually be dealing with a roulette wheel of quarterbacks in Minnesota. So although I'm buying his talent, I'm not buying a top 5 finish this season. Hill is capped by Alex Smith. He'll have huge weeks. He'll have quiet weeks. And Crabtree can't be top 5 by virtue of the presence of Cooper and Jared Cook. Ugh. A.J. Green is one of my picks there, provided he can stay healthy and play all 16 games. My other 2 candidates, Jordy Nelson and T.Y. Hilton. Once Luck returns, and it could be as soon as week 6, maybe 7, we're told, Hilton will explode, and I say he'll finish top 5 this season.
That's pretty ballsy.
He led the league in receiving yards last year. Actually,
but he'll be playing for it. The gap will be so large he can't make it up.
We'll see. But you like the A.J. Green call at the very least?
Yeah, I'll give you A.J. Green. See, it's a half-point PPR that instantly moves Tate so far up the board for me because he catches a ton of passes.
I know, but you know where he is right now in half PPR leagues?
That's because we had one terrible game.
He's 18 right now.
Yeah, it's one because of 1 week. We don't have
2.
a big sample right now.
It's true, but we're trying to,
I did just
trying
forecast.
to do some trend spotting on the show here this
I should have had a Jamaican accent.
Yeah, man.
Call Miss Cleo today.
Call Miss Cleo. We'll help
then
you
I'll
out.
go to federal prison for 30 years.
I'm going to do the whole final segment as Miss
Oh,
Cleo.
Jesus.
Or Billy Mays, your choice. All right. More matchups. Week 4, we're breaking them down. 515 Fantasy Football on 1350 AM, ESPN Radio. Back into the Week 4 matchups. NFL action. 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM, ESPN Radio. Simulcast on 102.1 FM in Central Iowa. Online at ESPNDesMoines.com. Andy Hall and Brian Eikenberry with your next set of matchups here. Philadelphia at the Los Angeles Chargers. Begin on the Eagles side. Carson Wentz, a B grade. The Chargers are banged up in the secondary. Good thing their pass rush is among the league's best through 3 games. Wentz will need to get rid of the ball quick or risk seeing a lot of the game from the turf. I do think he's a decent volume play, that said, and because of that, worth a look if you're in a bad spot at quarterback this week. Legarrette Blount's getting a B- from me. With the season-ending injury to Darren Sproles, the early down work automatically goes back to Blount, who scored his first touchdown last week and should have at least one opportunity up close this week against a porous Chargers run defense. Wendell Smallwood is a C+, hot waiver wire pick this week. Assuming he does see a dramatic increase in snap count and touches, Smallwood is a really solid dart throw this week. We'll talk more about him later on. Shawn Jeffrey, a B grade. With roughly 200 yards to go around to Eagles receivers this Sunday, I do believe Jeffrey can have a very nice fantasy day against the Chargers. Again, a big caveat to that is if quarterback Carson Wentz can get rid of the ball in requisite amount of time. If he spends much of his day looking at the ceiling or the turf, that's bad for Jeffrey. Nelson Aguilar is a C grade. Because the Chargers will be trying to get after Wentz all day long, I'm fading Aguilar, who tends to be a downfield kind of route runner. If the game plan is to get the ball out of Wentz's hands as quickly as possible, that's not good for Aguilar. Zach Ertz is a B grade. As good as he's been, the Chargers are a downright dominant unit against opposing tight ends. I'm still starting him, but I'm not expecting a ton of production versus a team that held Travis Kelce to 1 catch for 1 yard in week 3. And the Chargers, Phillip Rivers, a B+. If he can avoid turnovers, and that's been a big problem for him thus far, Rivers is a solid start most weeks, including here at week 4 at home against an Eagles team that has given up the 6th most passing yards through 3 games, a total of 5 passing scores. Melvin Gordon is a B grade. If he's healthy, he's in your lineup. Just know Miami's been pretty stout against opposing runners in their 2 games thus far this season, and they've already forced 3 fumbles in 2 games. Scaling back on my enthusiasm for Gordon this week based on the matchup and his groin issue, which could at any time flare up. Keenan Allen, actually, is it a knee or is it a groin?
I
forget.
My groin flares up.
Oh, that's nice, Brian. Keenan Allen's a B+, should have very little issue piling up receptions and yards. Chargers' best bet for a score through the air as well. He's a solid start this week, and Keenan Allen's a guy that you should probably target if you're looking to upgrade at your wide receiver position, just saying. Tyrell Williams is a C+, possession, chain-moving guy that doesn't have a lot of touchdown upside this year. In PPR formats, he's worth a look in the flex spot, considering this is a decent matchup for him. Antonio Gates, I'll give a C grade to. Another week that Hunter Henry was nowhere to be found last weekend. Gates is still the preferred guy, but simply doesn't have a lot to offer at his age.
All right, let's rip into the New York Giants at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Giddy up, pal. This actually, it's a good game for Tampa Bay to kind of see where they're at, see what you can do with your squad. Quarterback Eli Manning is going to get a B-. Might have turned a corner last week with his big performance that was nearly better than his first 2 games combined. Still chucking those interceptions, though, which is costing you points. But the Bucs have allowed 2 300-yard passers so far. So
one of them named Case Keenum.
Yeah, whoops. Paul Perkins, leave him on the bench. The run game is ridiculous. It's worse than the Lions. It's the worst in the league. No reason to think it's ever going to get better. The offensive line is a dumpster fire. You can pretty much drop him.
Yeah,
I did.
I know. Right? That thing I said in the headlines about Gerald McCoy and then Levante David both getting injured and probably going to miss some time. Fire up your running backs against Tampa, except for this week.
Yeah, except for this week. Odell Beckham Jr., he's going to get a B+. Good payday for him last week, as predicted. His poor performance was his week 1 rust. I think he's going to be back to form, and Eli is not afraid to throw interceptions. He doesn't care. He's going to keep throwing it. He's going to keep throwing it. He's just going to keep doing it, and Beckham's going to be the guy. Marshall, go ahead and leave him on the bench. Outright droppable. Go out there and grab Shepard at 133 yards, which is going to still take Brandon Marshall 4 more games to reach that combined.
Yeah, Shepard's the number 2, definitely.
100%.
Yep.
So Shepard, he's going to get a B out of me to go with.
Yep. And then Evan Ingram's a rookie tight end. We don't trust them. So, I mean,
No.
you just don't know what he's going to do.
Especially not on the Giants.
Right.
On to the Bucs, quarterback Jameis Winston, B+, a must start and a must perform for Jameis. His decision making is back to being a rookie, but hopefully it gets all settled down. The whole NFL is off to rocky starts, and the Bucs are a week behind. Don't forget, Jaquiz Rodgers, B-. The Giants have had a good run on defense, or a good run defense, and it's his last week to shine. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to pan out for him this week. And honestly, nothing has panned out for Jaquiz Rodgers at this point.
Nope, just waiting for Doug Martin to return, and I think once he does, it'll become his backfield. There was a time in the preseason I thought Jaquiz Rodgers could win
he's gonna
this
make
job.
a play, and they might drop him. What's going to happen? No.
I mean, remember last year some of the volume he was getting? I mean, he was get upwards of 30, 35 carries in games. It was crazy.
It was, indeed. So on to Mike Evans. Hey, same thing for Evans here. You need a big game. You draft him huge. He was first round in every single draft. Mike Evans was there. Not performing. He has 7 receptions in each game, but you don't have that first-round performance that you need in your lineup to make it awesome. Get that stank eye over there. You all right?
Well, I'm just wondering Janoris Jenkins has missed some time for the Giants. If he gets back in the lineup, that could be another one of these for Mike Evans, like the Xavier Rhodes. Although Janoris Jenkins,
but this is the thing,
he's not as big and physical as Xavier Rhodes is. So
I don't. At this point, though, I don't care. If you want to be the number 1. If you want to be a top 5 wide receiver, it doesn't matter who's on you. Period.
It just feels like this is another one of these like last week where Evans does okay, but like Deshaun Jackson's going to be the guy.
Yeah. I mean, so I think back. Calvin Johnson, Randy Moss, these big, true, elite wide receivers. It didn't matter who was on them. They were still going to perform. And Mike Evans should be that guy. but he's not that guy.
Yeah, we saw that last week. No question.
So there you go. Take that. Deshaun Jackson, B+. About 50% of his targets are caught, so it's either boom or bust. I said start him last week. You got 8 catches and a touchdown. I expect the same this week because of his route tree. It's going to pay off against the Giants as it did against everybody else. Their middle linebacker is not great in pass coverage, so Deshaun Jackson right across the middle every single time. I look for a lot of balls to be caught his way this
downfield.
week.
I mean, if Jameis takes some shots downfield, shoot, Deshaun Jackson's probably going to be under some of those.
Yep, and good boy Cameron Brate there. TD last week. I think he's going to do it again this week.
I agree with that, actually. I like that. I
Yeah,
looked at this
100%.
matchup and I said Cameron Brate, he was a touchdown guy last year. He led the league in touchdown catches. There's no reason why he can't do it again this week. So there you have it. San Francisco at Arizona. First, the Niners, and this should be pretty quick. Brian Hoyer's on the bench, steering clear of this one on the road in Arizona. Carlos Hyde, though, he's a B grade, has never scored in Arizona in 4 previous meetings with the Cardinals. The reason for my optimism? Volume. The Cards have only allowed just over 3 yards per carry over their first 3 games, but they have given up 3 touchdowns, leading me to believe Hyde has the potential for 60 to 80 total yards and a score if all goes well. Pierre Garcon is a C grade, the only Niners receiver worth mentioning here, and even he's a shaky start as he likely matches up with the stud cover corner Patrick Peterson much of this game. So, I mean, if the Niners could put anything in the end zone this week, it's probably thanks to Carlos Hyde is my thought on this. Over to the Cardinals, Carson Palmer is an A-. He's averaging more than 332 passing yards per game against the Niners in his last 5 head-to-head matchups going back to 2013. That's a big number for a guy like Carson Palmer. 7 passing scores over that span, too, but 6 INT as well. I'm feeling very good about this one for Palmer in the Cardinals passing game. He just needs to avoid turnovers, and he should be golden in this one. The A- for Carson Palmer. Chris Johnson, I'll give a B grade to. Teams typically love to run the ball against these Niners, and even though they're only giving up 3.5 yards per carry on the season, they did just get lit up by Todd Gurley in a suspect Rams running game on Thursday of last week. Johnson is far from a home run, but if you're desperate and need a guy that should see some decent volume, why not take a look? He's out there. Speaking of guys that are out there, Andre Ellington. PPR play only. Ellington has actually looked like the most valuable Cardinals back since David Johnson's wrist injury back in week 1. Even if you're not playing him this week, he's worth a roster spot in PPR leagues. I'll give him a C+ here. Larry Fitzgerald, an A grade, should have similar workload to what we saw on Monday night against the Cowboys. Massive target share in that game. Fitz is alive and well, even at his age. In his 2 games against San Fran last season, Brian, he caught 6 passes for 81 yards and 2 scores in the first matchup in the Bay Area, and then 12 catches for 133 yards in Arizona.
Ridiculous.
Larry Fitzgerald is an absolute lock this week. He's one of my favorite receiver starts of the week. What to do with the other guys, though? Jaron Brown. If John Brown misses another game, which he may, Jaron Brown is actually the Cardinals' 2nd most fantasy valuable pass catcher. Typically, he's one of those chain-moving possession types I talk a lot about, but also carries some scoring potential in good matchups like this one. I'm giving Jaron Brown a B. It's all dependent on whether or not John Brown misses the game. If John Brown misses, Jaron Brown can be plugged in. J.J. Nelson was a hot waiver wire pickup after a great week 2. A deep threat, very boomer bust, as we witnessed in the splits between his week 2 and his week 3. He can't be counted on even if John Brown misses another game. So for that reason, I give J.J. Nelson a middling C grade. You're probably better off looking elsewhere. He didn't even have a catch last week, and that's heartbreaking for me. I had a matchup, Brian, where it was in my work league, where all I needed was 1 point. 1 point. And I couldn't even get that from J.J. Nelson. This is a PPR league, by the way.
Should have had an IDP spot, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I'm not the commish. I'm not a commish guy like you are.
I love being in charge.
Oh, I know that. Because
I run a tight ship, and everyone's happy campers in my league. And if they have anything to say about it, they get fined.
You know what? Nobody really complains in your league, do they?
Nope.
Brian rules with an iron fist.
I do. There's a little bit of glitter on it, but
a little glitter.
Everyone's scared of penalties.
Yeah.
Keep it up. Run your mouth. You're going to get a penalty.
It's true. It's true. All right, one more set of matchups, friends, including the Sunday Nighter, the Monday Nighter. It's all next on 515 Fantasy Football on 1350 AM ESPN Radio. Final set of matchups for Week 4. This is the 515 Fantasy Football Show on 1350 AM ESPN Radio, Des Moines, Iowa. We are also simulcast on 102.1 FM in Central Iowa, which, come to think of it, I forgot to talk to somebody about that because I think our contract probably changes.
Yeah, it should.
We should be probably getting paid more for this, shouldn't we?
I agree.
Yes, indeed. All right,
I didn't know we were getting paid to begin with.
I know, right? Exactly. One final set of matchups. Brian, we'll begin with you.
Maybe I'll get some free coffee when I swing by.
Maybe.
Maybe. All right, quarterback. Hey, we're going to do the Raiders at the Denver Broncos.
Okay.
Quarterback Derek Carr, B. I'm not expecting fireworks. The pass defense has always been decent in Denver. And after getting smoked in Washington, I'm not sure how he does a complete 180.
Did you see that?
180 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions.
For me, I mean, Derek Carr is a C at best this week.
Wow. Wiggity. What? Running back Marshawn Lynch, C+. Denver's run D is suffocating, plain and simple, allowing 59 yards per game as Lynch is averaging less than 50 yards a game. You must consider your other options if you have them.
I feel like this is the week he finally arrives.
No.
I do.
Not happening.
Because I don't think it's going to be the passing game. I think they have to get right in that running game, and that offensive line knows how bad they played last week. So this could be a get-well game for Marshawn Lynch, I think.
No.
Okay.
Wide receiver Amari Cooper, B-. Likely to get yardage, and if they abandon the run early, expect plenty of targets. TD should never be expected with Cooper, merely is seen as a bonus, and let's not forget he has about 100 yards through 3 games.
It should be a lot more considering all the passes he's dropped thus far. Good Lord.
Him and Ebron must have hung out this offseason.
So frustrating as an owner.
Wide receiver Michael Crabtree is going to get the B, officially listed as questionable with a chest injury, but I expect him to roll. It's a good defense, but the Raiders must revert back to 2016 and show the AFC that they belong, especially in Denver.
Yeah, Crabtree probably gets Chris Harris in coverage more often than not. Chris Harris is elite, but he's also small in stature. Michael Crabtree's a big guy. Cooper will probably get Aqib Talib.
Aqib, and his mom likes to shoot people, so.
Sure.
Quarterback Trevor Siemian, he's going to get the B+. Got skunked in Buffalo last week, but I expect that to change as playing at home has been vastly different, in which he averages 220 yards and 3 touchdowns per game in his comfort zone. Consider him a great start. C.J. Anderson's going to get an A here. Raiders give up well over 100 on the ground, and C.J. has been a workhorse. I was calling to sell him high if you can, but if you didn't sell, you took that 36-yard game right in the teeth last week. It'll be different. Yeah, it'll be different this week because the matchup is favorable.
He and Jamal Charles were a 50-50 last week.
Jamal Charles, if you remember, I drafted him in our listener league because you needed to keep him, but you didn't. You dropped him, didn't you?
No, we still have him.
You're
talking about the Pro-Am we're part of.
the Enterprise one,
the Pro-Am
nationwide one.
Yeah.
Jamal Charles averages 5 yards a carry.
He's still on our roster.
Good, because he's gonna be taking over.
Looked good on that touchdown run last week.
Monster.
Yeah.
Let's see. Who did I leave off here? Demaryius Thomas going to get a B. All those yards and 0 touchdowns. Could this be the week? Probably not. He is clearly not the red zone option. The prop bet is to who's going to score first, Amari Cooper or Demaryius Thomas.
Boy, I'd have to give it to Thomas.
So would I. Keep an eye on the hamstring. It was an issue in the late fourth quarter last week. Emmanuel Sanders is going to get a B+, was scoreless against Buffalo, but that changes again this week. Look for 16 to score, as he and Siemian are tight when it comes to it connecting, and C.J. Anderson is probably going to get that goal line work. So
the Sunday Nighter is Indy at Seattle. First, the Colts. Jacoby Brissett, I'm leaving on the bench. We caught a glimpse of what he's capable of in Week 3, throwing for 259 yards and a score and running one in as well. But that was against Cleveland. This is Seattle at home, where they are a force even the NFL's elite quarterbacks have had trouble succeeding against. Frank Gore is a B grade. Seattle are one of only 2 teams allowing over 5 yards per carry on the season. And this week, get a Colts team that has to establish the run early and often in order to keep this game competitive. Gore is in line for a huge workload, both on the ground and in the air. He's only scored 6 touchdowns against the Hawks in 19 career games as a Colt and a Niner. He's a volume play with a little touchdown upside. We saw him run one in last week. He could do it again here if they get up close. T.Y. Hilton's a B-. Back in 2013, the Colts hosted the Seahawks. Hilton finished with 5 catches, 140 yards, and 2 touchdowns, surprisingly. I don't see this kind of success on the road without Andrew Luck, but I do think he's quick enough to find some open spaces, grab a few passes, enough to warrant a spot in your starting lineup. I say yes, but I feel better about him in the flex spot than I do in one of your wide receiver slots. Dante Moncrief's a C grade because, quote, somebody's got to catch the ball, right? I don't love this matchup at all, but if you're absolutely desperate, Moncrief does give you a warm body that will be targeted. Jack Doyle, C+. Until we see his target share increase, he's nothing more than a chain-moving guy that runs primarily intermediate routes in between the 20s. And the Seahawks, Russell Wilson, an A grade, an excellent start in the right matchups. See Week 3 versus Tennessee. Indy has given up even more yards on the young season. Reports suggest Vontae Davis may return this week from a groin injury and make his season debut, but one man alone won't fix the dumpster fire that is the Colts' defensive backfield. And by the way, Wilson can and will contribute with his feet, as he did the last time he faced Indy. He ran for over 100 yards in that matchup. Chris Carson, a B+. Quietly, the Colts have been pretty steady against opposing runners, giving up only about 3.3 yards per carry through 3 games, less than 86 yards on the ground per week, a total of 4 rushing scores. Carson has proven to be Seattle's workhorse back, at least for now. Therefore, could be a really solid running back 2 option this week, assuming he gets volume. And with Procise already ruled out for Sunday night's game, Carson should be in line for a solid workload. Doug Baldwin, a B+. Even if the aforementioned Davis returns to the field this week, Baldwin is a great start. Nearly 300 yards per game up for grabs to opposing pass catchers. Just make sure he's healthy enough to go before you plug him in for a Sunday nighter. Paul Richardson, a B-. Wilson tends to look for him in the red zone. Thus far, that has panned out nicely for Richardson, who still isn't rostered by the vast majority of fantasy teams. And Jimmy Graham, I'll give a B+ to. Another good matchup here for Graham, who saw 11 targets in Week 3, catching 7 passes for 72 yards, after we thought he might even miss the week. If he's healthy, he should be in your lineup.
All right, let's rip into the Washington Redskins at the Kansas City Chiefs.
Monday Nighter.
Quarterback Kirk Cousins, B. I'm not totally confident, but his 360 yards and 3 stat line was great. The Chiefs' defense isn't what it was last year, so you can press him into action this week as he is given the appearance of gaining ground. Running back Rob Kelly, look, you know how this is going to go. We're not sure who's doing what, so you need to pay attention. I'm going to give him and Chris Thompson the same grade because I think they're kind of interchangeable this week.
Interesting.
Because what if Rob Kelly isn't going to go and I'm going to have to make this call?
I think Kelly's going this week.
I do too. So I'm going to give them both a B+. Rob Kelly's still day-to-day, blah, 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 blah. Chiefs generally a soft run defense this year. I believe in his ability. Chris Thompson, he's the only one with touchdowns basically, it seems. So why not? Whoever gets the start, I'm going to give a B, but I'm not giving Chris Thompson a grade if Rob Kelly's going to go. I don't think you can start both in that scenario.
Yeah, I would agree, unless you're in a PPR league. Thompson's a great play in PPR leagues, but if you're in a standard, yeah.
No. So Terrell Pryor, I'm going to give a B-. Not quite panning out as anticipated, but I'm not ready to quit on him yet. Maybe they need more time. Things are starting to turn around. Reduced targets over the last 2 weeks. 8 combined, to be a matter of fact. So not sure if he isn't getting open or if it's just a trust issue right now with Cousins. Then you've got Crowder, who's tied with Pryor in targets and yardage, so there's no clear winner at receiver. Quarterback Alex Smith, B+. Doesn't matter who he plays, with his completion percentage always high, his team does the rest of the work and reaps the benefits. 7 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Now, Washington defense is pretty decent, but they have also yet to face some big-time playmakers in Kareem Hunt. I'm going to give him a B. This may be the week where everyone is stunned he doesn't have 40 points. The Redskins are very stingy on the run, only allowing 62 yards, and they're the 5th overall defense. So Hunt's points may be under 20 this week.
They ain't never seen Kareem Hunt, though.
Wide receiver Tyreek Hill is going to get B+, 252 yards and 2 touchdowns, so clearly he's the leading receiver. He gets 26% of the targets, and he's fast. So, yeah, why not Tyreek Hill? Chris Conley, pretty much not worth a start, but he'll have weeks here and there. He's technically the number 2 wide receiver, but number 4 on receptions and stats. Kelsey, he's going to get a B, number 2 on the receiving list and targets too, so you got to factor him in when you're that high on the receiving list.
Yeah. I think Kelsey has a big bounce back this week. After a very disappointing week 3. So I feel like Kelsey is a guy that...
Or he's going to get like 6 penalties.
Well, there is always the risk of that, but that doesn't hurt your fantasy squad, that's for sure. In fact, if they keep backing up, they might throw to him more.
That's possible.
They're not going to bench Travis Kelsey. Let's just face the fact, all right? We're through the matchups. That's it. Hopefully your starting lineups are locked and loaded. If they're not, maybe you need a little help. Brian and I have bargain bin picks coming up. 1 quarterback, 1 running back, 1 pass catcher that chances are available right now on your waiver wire. You can go pick them up, plug them in, and expect a decent amount of fantasy value from. And we're also going to recap week 3 of the 515 Fantasy Football Listener League and maybe get into a little flea flicker action as well. It's all next. Final segment of the 515 Fantasy Football Show. The final segment of this edition of the 515 Fantasy Football Show. Again, we're on 1350 AM, ESPN Radio in Des Moines, Iowa. Simulcast 102.1 FM in Central Iowa. We are available digitally on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, lots of different places. Also online at espndesmoines.com. Andy Hall, Brian Eikenberry. We're on Facebook. We're on Twitter. Come find us. The Bargain Bin segment is sponsored by our friends at Twisted Vine Brewing Company, Westtown Parkway, West Des Moines. Online, twistedvinebrewery.com. They got about 30 beers on tap, 25 of which are brewed on site, and absolutely delicious, Brian. And they've got wine as well.
Dude, their pizza's friggin' phenomenal. I was getting down on some chow. It's like this pizza, and it's like their thing is like it's got a half-pounded cheese on it, and it is freaking tasty with a nice, crispy, thin crust. I freaking love it, man.
Where do they get their pizzas from? Do you know?
I don't know. It's like a pub place that brings them in. I mean, they're freaking awesome, though.
Okay.
Delicious.
I was gonna say, if it's anything close to my favorite frozen pizza of all time, which is Heggy's Pizza in Minnesota, Heggy's Pizza.
Yeah, no, I'm a Jack's Pizza guy. About $1.70 a piece when they're on sale.
Go to Minnesota sometime.
I'm not going to Minnesota.
Go to a holiday station.
I don't have my passport.
Okay. Anyway, Twisted Vine Brewery is the place that Brian and or I are hanging out on Sunday mornings starting at 10:30. They open up at 10:30 just for us to come watch
free popcorn,
the pregame stuff, and then the Red Zone channel, and enjoy some delicious craft beers while we're at it. All right, Bargain Bin picks for the week number 4. Start with the quarterback position, and Brian.
I'm going to go with Jared Goff. Look, if Simeon can cut up the Cowboys, and so can Goff. On the road last week, he threw for 290 and 3, and no reason to think he can't do it again against a defense that's middle of the road.
Andy Dalton, owned in only 45% of Yahoo leagues. The Red Rocket looked more like himself in the Bengals' Week 3 loss, completing 21 of 27 passes for 212 yards and 2 scores on the road in Green Bay. The offensive philosophy definitely has changed for the better in Cincinnati. New OC Bill Lazor has Dalton getting rid of the ball much quicker, targeting his biggest weapon, A.J. Green, more often. The continuing increase of rookie running back Joe Mixon's snap and touch counts will also alleviate the pressure from Dalton, resulting in a much more fantasy-friendly quarterback. Who's your running back?
Wendell Smallwood, with the utility knife Darren Sproles out for the year, it clarifies Smallwood's role, especially on third down and passing attempts. He's a must-start in deep leagues.
It does happen from time to time, but we come to a consensus on the running back position this week. It is indeed Wendell Smallwood. How about your pass catcher?
My pass catcher is Sterling Shepard. Look, with Brandon Marshall looking like he's in an assisted living center, you can count on Shepard to continue to build his big game and come to the big boy table. Look, he's going to start seeing 6-7 targets a game. He's going to make that push.
Mine's Will Fuller. Incredibly, this dude's only owned in 3% of Yahoo leagues.
So dumb.
Battling only Nook Hopkins for targets in an offense led by an exciting rookie quarterback with a ton of room for growth. What's not to love about that, right? 47 receptions, 635 yards, and 2 scores in his rookie campaign. And those numbers are achieved over only 14 games, Brian. If you're hurting at wide receiver, he's most certainly worth an ad. Might even get back on the field this weekend and pay you some dividends. All right?
Yes, done.
Those are the bargain bins. The
Come on,
515 Fantasy Football Listener League is presented by Iowa Firecracken, Iowa-owned, Iowa-operated, America-approved. Salute. Find them online at firecracken.com, on Facebook, and on Twitter at iFirecracken. December 1st, when the fireworks are going on sale again.
I feel like Iowa Firecracken should do a Facebook commercial, and I should be in it.
Okay. You'll be that doofus buying fireworks at
with
the
the
register.
cannons, and I'll just have like some tight underwear on and just be like cigar in my mouth. It'll be great.
I have an idea.
This.
Let's strap Brian to the biggest rocket you've got.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's light
I've
it off.
done way dumber things.
Let's film it and see if he can actually get off the ground. And if not, Brian will explode anyway, and it'll just be pretty amazing. There you have it. If you're in the market for beautiful things that go boom, we hope you'll consider 3 local guys that love fantasy football almost as much as they love the business. They're in Iowa Firecracken. Recap of Week 3 of the Listener League. We tried to warn you all on last week's show, Brian and I, that we decided it was time to quit messing with you and start whooping some butts, all right? I got in the win column decidedly over the former number 1 team, Comb Over the Desert guy or whatever, by a score of 110.80 to 47.58. Brian's team took advantage of Cupcake Ricky, blowing out his candles 84.62 to 57.10. In other action, Phillips Bolo Tie hangs an L on Petty and the Jets, something he's familiar with as a Jets fan, by the way. 105.38 to 87.92. Boomin was a dud this week. Big Willie style goes to 3-0 with a 114.16 to 74.02 drubbing of Matt's team, which bailed on him in week 3. Ha! Speaking of undefeated squads, it was Pork Tacos this week, putting oink on the spit. 102.62 to 65.72. And the Purple People Eaters put up a league-high 156.12 points in annihilating Steve, who could only muster 126.30. Good enough to beat anyone else in the league this week. Worst feeling ever. I hate it when that happens. This week, your not-so-humble co-hosts do battle in the game of the week. One man will exit Week 4 with a 500 record. The other will be shacking up with bottom feeders. My money's on me, of course. Free Willy will try to escape the sperm whale eaters. Taco Corp will spice up his Week 4 with Steve's Annihilators, who I'm told can't handle the heat. Boomin better light some M80s up his players' keisters as he faces off against Petty and the Jets, who are still in contention for next year's number 1 seed, kind of like his team. Comb the Desert will try the low and slow method in smoke and oink, and our other lovable loser, Moo Cow Guy, hopes his players don't get put out to pasture as he matches up with Phillips Bolo Tie in the study with the rope. Duh. Best of luck to you all except Brian. You suck. Yeah, jackass.
Love you. All right, how much time we got left?
We have like 4 minutes, buddy.
All right, I'm going to go Star Wars. I'm going to talk about Rey and her parents.
Okay.
Because Episode 8 comes out here in like, what, 2.5 months?
It's got it getting there, right?
We're getting there, so
why not talk about it now?
Right, so Rey is a Palpatine. Here's why. All right.
You think she's related to the
she is
the
the
late
granddaughter.
Chancellor?
She is the granddaughter of Emperor Palpatine.
Or Emperor?
Yes.
I called him Chancellor because that's what he was.
So, my bits of evidence, and I've had this theory for a while. I've read some really good articles. One, her accent. So in Star Wars lore, the British accent meant you came from planets that were closer to the center of the galaxy, because that was more the educated and sophisticated style. So if you think Obi-Wan Kenobi, you think Emperor Palpatine, they all maintain their British accents in the films. In Episode 7, Daisy Ridley and John Boyega, who is Finn, are both British. Daisy was allowed to keep her accent. Finn was not. His was deliberately covered up for a reason. Number 2, Rey's fighting style. If you look at her fighting style compared to Episode 3 of Emperor Palpatine, Attack of the Clones, they are nearly identical. She strikes up to down in a downward motion, hanging her lightsaber high, and her first ever time holding a lightsaber and aiming it at Kylo Ren, she held it high above her head and pointed the blade directly to him in an attacking motion, not a defending motion like the Jedi. Okay? You still with me?
You have really put a lot of thought
You
into
still
this.
with me here?
Or you're
Still
just
with me?
stealing it from some website.
We're talking about it, so this is pretty awesome.
We are not talking about anything. You're doing all the
Yes,
talking.
I am doing all the talking because I'm super excited.
That's cool, though.
So there's some other stuff in here. It's about her flashback in episode 7 where she touched the lightsaber. You hear Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ewan McGregor. You hear Yoda, but you also hear Emperor Palpatine in there talking about something about being the only Jedi to do this kind of just some little stuff. And in the actual book, episode 7, when she's fighting Kylo, there's a line of dialogue where she hears a sinister voice in her head that says, kill him. And her first reaction and instinct was to kill Kylo.
It's the dark side.
Oh my God, if she's a Palpatine, I am so freaking excited, dude.
Yeah, that is a geek out moment for
I
a
am
Star
super
Wars
excited.
dork. Yeah, no question
Come
about
on
it.
home, baby.
I love me some Star Wars, but I got to tell you, man, I'm equally as in love with Star Trek. But one thing that annoys the hell out of me is that CBS, who has this brand new Star Trek series called Discovery.
I liked it, man.
Yeah, so episode 1 was aired on CBS earlier this week, but if you wanted to see episode 2, you had to pay for it.
Yeah, you jump right out there and get it a week early. And it's
Now,
like,
there are some that will say, hey, you're okay with paying for Netflix, Hulu, all these other things. Why not CBS bonus stuff? I'm like, because it's a network and we're just not used to it. Nobody's going to like that. I mean, it's annoying as hell. Give me my Star Trek episode 2, you jerks.
I liked it. It was a nice refresh.
It was decent.
It's going to take a little bit getting used to that things don't look like Gene Roddenberry's vision.
Yeah, it's not TNG. It's not the
The Klingons look a little different.
Yep.
Everybody looks a little different, and that's the problem.
Well, that was fun, wasn't it?
Freaking Palpatine, dude.
Okay, Brian's calling his shot or stole it off a website. All right, if you missed any part of the show, remember we're digital. You can go back and listen. Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, you name it, ESPNDesMoines.com. Till next time, good luck this week, except to you, Brian. I'm Andy Hall.
Eat it.
This is 515 Fantasy Football.